Bing bong. We are live with another edition of the State of Bitcoin podcast. But first, I'd like to thank everybody that streamed me some sats on Fountain and all those podcasting 2.0 apps. If you send me a boost, write a little comment. I'll read them. I got a few boosts and nobody left a comment. So next time you guys do that, just go ahead and leave a little bit of a comment and we can have some fun and read them pre-show. But I got a very special guest. I met him at the Financial Summit. We got Nico from Simply Bitcoin. Nico, how you doing today?
Man, I'm doing great, man. Thank you so much for the invite. I'm happy to be here.
Of course, of course. So you do quite a few things in the Bitcoin space. So, like according to your little link you got in your Twitter, you host Simply Bitcoin, you host ASIC miners, and you also host the BitVolt podcast. What got you like into Bitcoin, and how did you kind of get started? Just taking the dive full in and get that orange pill.
Yeah. So I got into Bitcoin 2016. I was not in a good situation in my life. I was working a minimum wage job. I was not doing so hot. And my cousin came to visit me from Venezuela, and I asked him what he was doing, and he basically told me he was like mining Bitcoin, but in the way that he said it to me was like magic internet money. And I just got so interested. I really wanted to escape my situation. So I sold everything I had. I borrowed money from my mother. I borrowed money from my ex-girlfriend, and I jumped on a plane, went to Venezuela, went to my uncle, and I told him, hey, can I work for you? He said, no, I'm not going to pay you a dime, but I will teach you everything that I know. And that was my initiation into Bitcoin. I have not looked back since. Around 2019, 2020, things were going well enough for me that I was able to, go full time. And that's really when I started Simply Bitcoin, because I had a lot of time on my hands. Dude, it just blew my mind how well it was received by the community. It opened a lot of opportunities, opened a lot of doors. And dude, I don't know, man. I really believe in good karma. I really believe in just, you help other people, they help you. And I was really, really fortunate enough, privileged to get invited to the Bitcoin conference, the first one in Miami, 2021. And dude, ever since that, like, holy crap, just conferences, unconfiscatable. And just, dude, like I'm lost for words, man. And I'm really blessed that the community, received Simply Bitcoin the way it did. We were one of the first well-known Bitcoin shows. There's a lot of podcasts before, but we wanted to do something different, a little bit different format. So we really did like a TV show style type of thing. It's a very unique format. And dude, like, it was really well received by the community. I don't even know, man. Things are just happening so fast, to be honest.
Yeah, man, it seems like everything that kind of goes along in this Bitcoin space, it just kind of, moves really quickly, right? Maybe for better or for worse, but I mean, it seems like everything's going really well for you guys at Simply Bitcoin. What was like what's your overarching mission for Simply Bitcoin? I know you guys do a little bit of a different show. Like you said, it's not necessarily a podcast. It's more like TV format. I know you guys do it on Twitter Spaces and everything as well. What's like kind of the overall goal for the show?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So we started as a Bitcoin show, and I was like, okay, this is tech, it's technology. And then what I think most Bitcoiners realize after a while doing a Bitcoin show is that you realize it's really a political show. It's not so much political in the Democrat, Republican, right, left sense. It's more so because you realize that Bitcoin in itself is one of the most powerful political movements in the world. But it's all inclusive. So it helps people on the left, helps people on the right. It really frees people. So one of the goals at Simply Bitcoin is to really wake people up from the fiat politics, like I say, and make them realize, hey, it's not the people on the left that is causing your problems, not the people on the right that is causing your problems. It's the money. It's stealing from you. You want to change things. You want a better life for you, your family, your future. You really got to fundamentally change the money. If you don't change the money, things won't change. The Republicans will take back power most likely in November. So like it won't change anything. And then the Democrats will probably take back, eventually, and it'll just keep going back and forth. And then the entire time they're blaming the other political parties for your issues. But it comes down to a fundamental problem. The money's broken. The money's stealing from everybody. Like every time the US government prints to send money to Ukraine, to pay for war, to pay for social programs, et cetera, they're literally stealing from you. Like if you're earning in dollars, you're saving in dollars, you have a $20 bill in your wallet, right? That thing is the purchasing power is just being redistributed from that to the government, and they're just going to keep doing it. And then Bitcoin comes along and it's basically like, hey, I can memorize these 12, 24 words. I could store them in my mind, and you can't steal from me anymore. Like that's basically it. So what we try to do at Simply Bitcoin is we try to wake people up from the fiat matrix and just be like, yo, dude, focus on what is actually happening here. Stop trying to kill the other side. That won't do anything. You really just have to opt out. And if enough people opt out, if enough people say, hey, I don't want to be stolen from anymore, I don't want to do this anymore, we will win this thing. Like we'll win this thing hard, and there's nothing they could do about it. But witnessing them try to maintain control is fascinating. Like August 10th, the United Nations released a report saying that they wanted to de-incentivize the adoption of Bitcoin and shitcoins in developing countries, even though we know that developing countries need it the most because of inflation, because of totalitarianism. But they don't give a flying fuck. Like what they want to do is they want to remain in power. Like that's what it's all about. That's what it's always been about. So witnessing these old institutions that have amassed this crazy amount of power over the decades, trying to remain relevant, is absolutely fascinating. And if we don't provide at least a counter narrative to the legacy media, no one else will, right? So that's what we try to do at Simply Bitcoin. We try to be the vanguard of information and truth in this decentralized peaceful revolution that we are living through. And dude, like every day I'm like, I can't believe I'm living through this pivotal moment in history. It's absolutely mind blowing, but there's so much noise. There's so much spin. There's so much propaganda. There's so much misrepresentation. It's just, it's crazy, but you have to stay on top of it. And the way that you do that is by going to the belly of the beast of the people of your enemies, going to Bloomberg, going to the Financial Times, looking out for any article that, talks negatively about Bitcoin, hit pieces on El Salvador, hit pieces on Nayib Bukele, and reading them and exposing them for the frauds that they are, like the misrepresentations that they try to convince people of. And you also have to understand that you're getting into the mind of your enemy by consuming this media. You're understanding how they think, right? How the financial elite of the fiat financial system think and how they feel about you, right? It's one thing just staying in your Bitcoin echo chamber, which with a bunch of plebs on Twitter, and it's just going back and forth. Oh yeah, this is the best. Got to eat steak and whatever. Those things are great and dandy, but this is a war. This is an information war. This is about winning the hearts and minds. And I really believe that you do that through truth. You get that truth out either through mimetic warfare, videos, like what you're doing. It's just, you got to overcome their bullshit. And they are losing. They know they're losing, which is why they're resorting a lot of censorship these days, deplatforming, all that. That all stems from the fact that these people were so used to having a monopoly on information for so long. And then Bitcoin, the internet, right, was just like, no, people could just talk amongst each other. And now Bitcoin is doing the same for money. All these powerful institutions were just like, yo, like we were always in control. This is up to us. And then Bitcoin's like, no, that doesn't work anymore. And that's really that's really what's causing the chaos right now. And what we try to do at Simply Bitcoin is to analyze it, break it down, and try to make it easily understandable for our viewers.
Yeah, and that's great stuff. And you guys do an outstanding job there. I've tuned into a few episodes, and yeah, like I said, I think you guys are doing an excellent job. But I think like the overarching message and kind of what you're trying to get people to, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, is trying to get that aha moment. I think like every Bitcoiner kind of has that moment where they find Bitcoin and then they realize, okay, well, money touches all these things. Do you think that, or do you have like a specific moment that, when you found Bitcoin that kind of gave you that moment that, okay, this whole system's really fucked up. And, as Bitcoiners say, we can fix the money and it would fix the world essentially.
Um, Dude, I had a couple aha moments. Like Bitcoin is like that. So many where you're just like, holy crap. And then you have a bunch where it's like the government's going to try to ban this thing. And it's like you just had go through every single possibility of just like, holy crap. Um, I've had so many throughout the years. The Bitcoin rabbit hole is never ending. Uh, and it's crazy because you meet Bitcoiners that are a couple years in front of your rabbit hole, and holy crap, it's like they have some they see what you're going to see in a couple years, but they're still falling through it too, and they come through to new realizations. But what I've noticed in these individuals is the freedom that they feel, right? And I think that's something that people don't quite understand. When you have total control over your money, over your currency, over your future, over your energy, over your time, um, it's an extremely liberating experience. And for you to say, hey, not even the US government, of course, they could put you in a box, they could torture you, get whatever, but they can't do it effectively and on a wide scale. They could definitely get some individuals and do this and this and that. But if you're paying your taxes, if you're being a good citizen, whatever, it's like, what are they going to do? They have to show their hand. They have to basically come out and say, hey, yes, we want people earning in a money that loses value by design. Yes, we want that, and that's going to be a very hard thing for them to market now that they have competition, which before they had done. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of great stuff there and a lot to unpack. But like I said, like you said, I think that at the end of the day, there's Bitcoiners, no matter what stage they're in, they're always kind of learning and always kind of taking things in, and yeah, just realizing so many things got fucked up along the way with this monetary policy. But like you said, or a little bit earlier in your rant, there is a lot of noise out there. And so, for people kind of just finding Bitcoin, maybe they hear about the, Ethereum or some of these other shit coins in the merge. I was lucky enough to join you at the financial summit, and I heard like you had a great Ethereum versus Bitcoin debate. So like, what would you do to who's somebody who approaches you and kind of ask you more so about Ethereum opposed to Bitcoin? Like, how do you kind of sway that person to say, it's Bitcoin and Bitcoin only?
Yeah, I mean, like, look, like shitcoiners, I think that they have different goals than Bitcoiners. Bitcoiners are really, it's about separating money and state. If you don't separate money from state, you kind of end up with the status quo. Um, if you don't, and that also goes down to the design philosophy and the architectural philosophy, right? Because Ethereum has so many features and so much more smart contract capability, et cetera, it's a lot more hardware intensive. Meaning, you need a specific, you need a certain amount of hardware capacity in order to run an Ethereum node. That causes the majority, because the barrier to entry is very high, right? You buy a Bitcoin node. This thing is like, it could be anywhere between 300 and 900 if you want it pre-made. Point is, though, like, it's affordable. It's not, super cheap, but it's affordable. You could do it super cheap by just running one on your computer if you really want to. Ethereum, you can't do that. It's very, very hardware intensive, meaning you need to spend thousands of dollars just to run a node. So what happens? The majority of Ethereum nodes are, and we know this, it's verifiable. The majority of Ethereum nodes, around 60%, are run on Amazon web servers. Sorry, on servers. of that 60%, 50% of that are run on Amazon web servers. And then the rest are run on Oracle, Google, and a bunch of other tech companies, but it's really a handful. So if the majority of your nodes of your network are run by a handful of companies, it's just a matter of time before the US government starts knocking and says, hey, you guys need to run something called an OFAC compliant node. And OFAC is the Office of Foreign Asset Control. They're basically they get to decide what people, what companies, what American companies, who they can do business with overseas. They're responsible with the sanctions, right? So current U.S. sanction policy is not compatible with how Bitcoin works, right? Bitcoin is the money of enemies. Anyone could use Bitcoin. Problem with Ethereum is that the U.S. government really already has them by the ball sack. And not only that, when they migrate to proof of stake, it becomes even worse because the biggest stakers are exchanges. And I was telling you this stuff before it even happened. And what we've witnessed in the last 2 weeks, which is obvious if you look at the game theory, the Office of Foreign Asset Control, the U.S. Treasury, sanctioned for the first time in its history an open source software. Usually they sanction an individual. Usually they sanction a country. But for the first time in its history, they were sanctioning a software. Why were they doing that? They were sending a message saying, hey, the United States government is still in control here, right? How long until they say, hey, you can only run an OFAC compliant Bitcoin node or you're breaking sanctions? They're already setting the precedent. Bitcoin is an open source software. So how long until it's like in a couple of years? You don't think it's going to be too crazy after what we've witnessed the last 2 years? Of course it's going to happen. And if your cryptocurrency, and only Bitcoin has achieved this, is not fully decentralized, it will inevitably be captured by regulators, by governments. So again, if you're trying to get rich, trying to get a Lambo, trying to speculate on Ethereum, you know, they have a hell of a marketing team, right? They'll say, hey, it's deflationary. Hey, it's whatever. Dude, Ethereum doesn't have a cap supply. You're really going by whatever Vitalik says, whatever the foundation says, and you're taking what they say at face value, period. And if we look at history, so many examples of societies starting out with sound money, and then push comes to shove, and that specific government has so much political pressure, and they start debasing the currency to print more money, to pay for the things, to pay for government services that they promised their people to get votes. And they start debasing their money, the currency, and it doesn't become sound. And you have the moral decay of society that I believe comes with the debasement of currency, right? And with Ethereum, it doesn't fix any of those issues, because the fact is that the monetary policy of Ethereum is still in the hands of human beings, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So if you have a group of individuals, and I'm not saying that Vitalik or any of the people in the Ethereum Foundation are necessarily evil, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Now, what Bitcoin did is it separated the monetary policy out of the hands of human beings, meaning even if I'm Michael Saylor and I say, hey, I want to change the cap supply of Bitcoin, you couldn't unless you convinced everybody that was running a node to change that code and to fork Bitcoin. Now, if I'm running a node, if I'm a little pleb that has 0.0001 Bitcoin, what incentive do I have to change and run that software that changed the cap supply of Bitcoin? None. Now, with Ethereum, they could force that because, again, only a handful of companies are running Ethereum nodes. 60%, the majority are running that. So the US government, on a theoretical basis, not even theoretical anymore because it's starting to play out, can and will capture this, and they will change it to better fit their own survival. And the bureaucracy really depends, right, on their ability to print an unlimited amount of money. That's how they pay themselves. That's how they pay for the social programs to get votes. That's how they pay for the wars, to pay off the defense contractors. That's how they do those things. And Bitcoin basically says, dude, it doesn't matter how powerful you are. unless you convince everybody, it's not democratic. It's not consensus. This is like, unless you convince everybody running their own independent node, hey, these are the changes, you go with it, can't do anything. You're just going to be running a shitcoin, a fork of Bitcoin. And that's actually what happened in 2017 when the most powerful mining conglomerates got together and they tried to make changes to the Bitcoin network, making bigger blocks. But the problem is that if they made bigger blocks, they would increase the hardware requirement to run a node, meaning they would be sacrificing decentralization. And they tried to do that, the most powerful Bitcoin companies, and they couldn't because the community said, nah. With Ethereum, they can't say nah because they're not the ones actually running the servers. Companies are. And companies are extremely prone to government coercion. A company at the end of the day, they just want to pay. They just want to make money. They want to pay their employees. Employees want to go home. It's up to the individual to make this change. And Bitcoin empowers the individual and Ethereum does not. Ethereum empowers the Ethereum Foundation, and you're getting along, and people are going along in the ride in the hopes of riches. Whereas in Bitcoiners, Bitcoin empowers you, the individual. If you take self-custody, ideally you should run your own node. But it empowers you and only you. And that's it. There is no, like Michael Saylor is going to benefit from the pump just as much as you. Period. Full stop. He runs a node and he's like, yo, I want to change this to enrich myself. You're looking at him like, yeah, dude, that's not going to work. Right? So that's the fundamental difference between something like Ethereum, something like XRP, and something like Bitcoin. Bitcoin put decentralization above all, which is why it's very simple. It's not complicated, simple by design. And Ethereum has all these bells and whistles, but what they never talk about is what they've sacrificed in order to make those bells and whistles. So yeah, that's the difference between the two.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you just nailed it right on the head. And I think, a big aspect of it too is what your values are, right? So, you talked a little bit about the values of Ethereum Foundation and all that kind of stuff. And, I'm not sitting here saying those guys are evil, but generally speaking, I hear, which one's going to moon next. They're talking more so about like the fiat price when it comes to the shit coins and everything else. And Bitcoiners are really, more about like that, like you said, that individual sovereignty and, kind of just being around that. And, something that I think is really cool that's going around right now is, the Bitcoin community is really rallying around Hodlonaut. So if you haven't really heard about this saga, Hodlonaut, he's a Bitcoin Twitter nim who works as the editor for Citadel 21. And he's being sued by Craig Wright in a defamation suit because Craig Wright is claiming that he is Satoshi, and anybody that kind of goes against him, he's been suing. He already sued Peter McCormack and everything like that. And so the Bitcoin community has come in and, to the help of Hodlonaut because, Craig Wright, you say what you want about him, but he's a really wealthy individual. So he can pay a lot of these lawyers, and lawyers cost a lot of money. And so I think the Bitcoin community has donated over 50 Bitcoin towards the legal cost of Hodlonaut so far. So a lot of great stuff going on there. So, what do you think about this entire saga and the Bitcoin community kind of rallying behind Hodlonaut?
Yeah, it's not only Hodlonaut. CSW is attacking all Bitcoiners. He is trying to silence dissenting speech through fear and intimidation. If he successfully silences Hodlonaut, other people will be fearful to speak out in the fear of being sued into oblivion. Most countries don't have the speech protections that the United States has, right? So the UK, Europe has terrible libel laws where, if you speak negatively about someone, they could sue you and they could tell you and basically get you to shut up, right? But attacking you financially. And that's exactly what CSW is trying to do. He's trying to go after Hodlonaut to send a message to all Bitcoiners to say, hey, shut up or else I'll sue you. Now, the silver lining is that the community rallied around him. I think he's raised like 54 Bitcoin, which is like $1 million in change current price. And he's been able to successfully kind of keep the beasts at bay, so to speak, which is extremely promising. It's very awesome. And let's see where this goes. We are sponsored by Citadel 21, which is Hodlonaut's zine. And we have a good relationship with him. We always have. So I've heard more of the stories on a personal level, and it's been extremely hard on the Spacecat, but he understands the significance of this and what it represents and what it means. And he's stepped up to the plate. He's put his own money behind this. And he really waited to the very, very last second before he asked the community for help. The lawyers in the UK are extremely expensive. And yeah, man, we really have to just kind of rally around him and help him out. But it's excuse my language, it's just bullshit. Like, it's just bullshit. Like, he has a bigger war chest than Hodlonaut, and he's trying to use that to silence him, and in the process sending a message to the entire community. Dude, this guy was sending cease and desist letters to multiple exchanges to take the white paper off the exchanges because I don't know. So yeah, man, that's really where that stands.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, I didn't know that you knew, Spacecat on a personal note, but I think that at the end of the day, I think, like you said, the overarching message is that the community is really rallying around him, and if you want to donate, feel free to go to defendingbtc.com, and you can do that. That link's going to be in the show notes and in the the comment section below too. So if you feel inclined, definitely go ahead and donate for the cause, because like you said, like, he's trying to silence like all Bitcoiners and anybody kind of standing against him. And it's truly a shame that it's come to this point. But yeah, I mean, like I said, like, he's not only sued Hodlonaut, he sued McCormick as well. And the UK court awarded CSW £1 and claimed that he used false evidence in court for that defamation suit. So hopefully, fingers crossed that Hodlonaut gets the same. But obviously the legal battle can be a strain on you, not only mentally, but your family and everything like that too. Like, I mean, it's definitely a tough time ahead. So he's fighting that fight, and I think there's the last 7 days in court are starting on September 12th. So I know the community is going to be watching that really closely.
Yeah, man. There's a telethon starting tomorrow. I think we might stream it from our spaces, but yeah, it's very important. Again, this is an attack on all Bitcoiners. It isn't just an attack on the Spacecat. And yeah, man, let's see. From what Hodlonaut's told me, he has really good case. He's picked up a lot of evidence, and from what I've seen, CSW is just resorting to character attacks because he has nothing else to stand on. But I mean, I think it's time for it's the moment of truth, bro. Let's see where this goes. Let's see where this goes. But it's definitely a very significant case.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you said it greatly, and so yeah, everybody get on that telethon tomorrow and donate if you're able to, because yeah, it's definitely a big case for the community. But let's move on to the next story. So the Federal Reserve is having another meeting this Friday on Jackson Hole, and so this one's a little bit more anticipated. It seems like just because the Fed at this point, it's not an issue of, are they going to raise rates? It's essentially like how much, right? So that's kind of been their move to try to raise interest rates to combat inflation, because, we're in a very difficult time, when it comes to, especially like, in the United States and globally, where, inflation's running rampant. Gas prices are a lot higher than they were a year ago. Food prices are higher, rent, everything. But I think the latest Fed fund futures showed that there's like a 51% chance of a 50 basis point hike next month. Like right before the Wednesday's minute release this past Wednesday, the rate futures had a factored in a 75% or 75 basis point rate hike. So, I guess my question is like, what do you think that the Federal Reserve should do at this point? Because in my opinion, it seems like it's more of a supply issue more so than the monetary policy. Obviously, the monetary policy, printing 60% of the dollars in the past couple of years as extremely big factor in all of it. But at the end of the day, shutting down the world economy for months and years at a time did a lot more damage, or seemingly did damage that is like carrying over. And it seems like the Fed's almost in between like a rock and a hard place. Like, how do you think that they should go about this situation, and like how do you view of the job that they're doing?
I mean, look, they are in a tough position because, dude, they continue raising rates, man, and I think it's inevitable because they have to control inflation or get inflation under control, and I don't think it's going to be a quick process. But if they continue raising rates, they're just going to crash the U.S. economy, which is where I believe this is heading. I think I honestly think things are going to get a lot worse. I think we had a summer rally. The stock market had a summer rally, and I think that like calmed a lot of people. But if you look at 2008, you look at the .com crash, dude, there was like 50% rallies, 60% rallies, like so. I think we already are in a recession. It's funny how they try to redefine it, but I think we already are in one. Now, the question is how bad things are going to get. But if you look, for example, at the energy situation in Europe, and it was totally caused because it was the energy policies that they picked, those politicians over there. Dude, it's like they're paying a record amount for their energy, and then you just like, okay, what does this have to do with the economy? How do you think the factories pay for the power, right? So it all trickles down. Not to mention the record inflation. I think the UK had over 10%, right? And their only weapon to this is to cool down the economy, to cool down spending. But if the economy is already in a terrible spot, dude, that's the recipe for a disaster. I think we all feel it in our guts, but I think it's hard to zoom out towards the macro level. Now, how do I think they've been handling it? Dude, it's central banking. All central planning fails. Like it always does, dude. Like it can't be that some dude in DC literally gets to decide whether the US economy is booming, whether it's not booming, based on how much money they're printing, based on what is that? That's insane to me. Like it's insane. But I mean, so people like that sometimes because people would rather have this centrally planned thing of Frankenstein than endure business cycles. They would rather lessen the blow. But I mean, it's very short-sighted because then you need the money printer. If you have the money printer, then people that don't have the means to save in assets, like the lower and middle classes, dude, they're just going to continue getting poorer because the rich are just going to get richer because they have their money in assets, which benefit from the money printing, right? But the lower middle classes don't have that. So it's like, is trying to get rid of market cycles really worth it? If you have a central bank in your country is halfway to a communist country already. It's starting right there, right? So communism always ends up one way. Everyone has their political ideology, and it's like, oh, socialism is whatever. Dude, look, fine. I'm not trying to bash the left or do anything like that, but name me one successful communist country. Name me one. Now name me one successful capitalist country. It's not equal. It's not perfect, but it's night and fucking day. It's night and day, right? So I'm not a fan of central planning. I think it falls on its face. Central planning will never be better than millions upon millions of individuals making their own decisions. And then that provides us a price signal to manufacturers, to entrepreneurs. It's like what to make, what not to make. There's this one guy in DC that is literally running the US economy to the point that he was able to print 40 to 60% of the dollars that have ever existed. And then that led to other people's savings being diluted. The housing cost increased 100% over the period of 2021, 2022. Fuck that. It's a terrible system. Now, connect this with what I was talking about with the shitcoining, right? Ethereum will end up exactly the same because the issue, right, is that there's a group of people that think they know what's best. But time and history has shown no. So Bitcoin, what Satoshi did was incredible because he basically said, listen, the monetary policy is set in stone. And in order to change it, you need to convince everyone in the network to run what you're running. Good luck. So he figured out how to take the monetary policy out of the hands of human beings. Now, what the fault with the central bankers and the central planners is that they believe that they could do this best. Okay, also, let's look at history. It's not a coincidence that the most violent century in human history happened to be the century of central banking. The largest crashes in the economy to 1929, 1980, 1970s, 2009, 92 or 99, all under central banking. So they have no legs to stand on, bro. They have no legs to stand on. There is absolutely no reason why this thing needs to exist. So they're all playing pretend. Powell's playing pretend. Do you know that Powell, he was a lawyer? He's not even a banker. He's a lawyer. So a lawyer is running the US economy. And look how it's ended up. And everybody is surprised by the results. What did you think was going to happen? And the reason the politicians are okay with this is because they have a money printer. It's like, oh, we want to go to war. We want to send 600 billion to Ukraine. We want to send 300 billion. We want to pay, what the Biden administration did to buy votes before the midterms. We want to pay off all student loans. Okay. Print it. So why would politicians be against this? They love that shit. The central bankers fucking love that shit. So it's this like secret alliance. Now with Bitcoin, I hope that it wakes enough people up where they're just kind of like, yo, screw this racket, screw this, keep your political money. I don't care about Joe Biden. I don't care about Donald Trump. I'm going to opt out. I'm going to put my money in Bitcoin, 21 million, can't be debased, can't be easily confiscated. You guys could have fun with that, and I'm going to do me. But it's funny because they can't have enough. They can't have a lot of people doing that because it just wakes people up, wakes people to the scam, and it takes people out of the system. Christine Lagarde even said it. You can't have an escape valve, and Bitcoin is this escape valve that it's like not only could they can't shut it off, they can't take it away from people. So it's like they're just trying to like plug shit. Dude, I think I brought this up earlier. The United Nations released a report that said we must de-incentivize the adoption of cryptocurrencies in developing countries. Oh, man, they're fucking scared, dude. They're terrified. Yeah, those are my thoughts on Powell.
Yeah, I mean, like 100%, right? They're 100% scared of Bitcoin and everything that it does. And I think, when it comes down to it, all of these entities, like you said, they're centralized. It's a few people believing that they can make decisions for many, right? And the thing that Bitcoin mastered, which I don't know if can ever really be replicated is the true decentralization of it. And the digital scarcity. That was the first thing that, the theory behind the internet was like, everything was, widespread and everything, like you could essentially make up something out of thin air. But, Satoshi did something that, I don't know if it can ever be replicated. And, like you said, I think it's interesting how just one guy who, Powell isn't even an elected official. So even like you said, right, left, he was, the Fed chairman under Trump, and he, reinstated under Biden. And so, at the end of the day, he's played both sides, and you want to get reelected if you're Powell's to stay in power. And so you're going to do whatever the president or, that party essentially wants you to do. Right. So, it's kind of it's a tough place to be in, and I don't envy his position at all. But it seems like you said, he's just kind of pulling these strings, and the market and the U.S. economy just overall, like, they react to it. Just like you said, there is some short rallies, and I think it's interesting that we saw the market, the CPI print of last month was 8.5%, which the expected or whatnot was like 8.7 or 8.9 or something. So it beat expectations, but it was still like 8.5% CPI, which is a manipulated number, right? And the market rallied that day. So it doesn't really seem to make any sense to me as to what all of this is going on. And it's just like you said, just one guy kind of controlling the overall economy. And, you brought this up, but President Biden is now announcing that there's student loan forgiveness. And the deal behind that is, there's 10K is going to be removed of student loans of anyone that makes less than 125K, and then 20K off of loans for anybody that received a Pell Grant. And like you said, it seems like it's conveniently timed to right before midterm elections, or right during that time. So it seems like these politicians are just kind of pulling these strings, but at the end of the day, like the average American's the one that gets hurt, because where is this money going to come from, right? So now that 10K, most of these student loans are federal student loans issued out by the government, so they're going to have to get their money back somehow. So it's either going to be come at you from taxes or some other way. And they just announced as well that they're like doubling the size of IRS agents for audits. So, I mean, it just seems like all this writing's on the wall, and they're basically laying out the plan right in front of you of how they're going to do it. They're going to start to come at you, whether it's come at you for trying to ban Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, and just tax the shit out of you, essentially. So I don't know. I mean, I just really, like you said, I think that there's going to be a bloody way out of this. And I think that there's no way that the average American can really win unless they opt out and kind of find their way towards Bitcoin.
Yeah. Dude, Bitcoin is the hope, man. The IRS thing was just like a slap in the face, because it's like we caused inflation because we printed too much money, but you peasant, you must pay. Like it's the most comical. Oh, and then they have the gall to call it Inflation Reduction Act. Like, bro, if there isn't a better example as to why, we must end central banking, I don't know what. Like, central banking, central banking, politicians and but it's like an evil alliance. It's just, if you just simplify, you say separate money from state. That's really what needs to happen. Like, no politician should have the ability, by passing a law that says we can print an unlimited amount of money that everyone else has to work for, and in the process of printing all that money, it debases everyone else's money. No politician should have that power. No human being should have that power, which is what Bitcoin figured out. Hey, if you want one Bitcoin, you have to buy it, earn it, and mine it. Doesn't matter if you are Nancy Pelosi. Does not matter. You got to earn it, you got to buy it, or you got to mine it. It means you got to spend proof of work, bro. Cost energy, cost money, cost time, right? Can't be that they're just creating thing, and it's time theft. They're stealing time and energy from everybody else. It's this like self-fulfilling fucking prophecy. Now, here's the thing, right? Because these people are maniacs. If they give up that power and they just let Bitcoin win, they could benefit from it too. But no, they want to be totalitarians at the top of the pyramid, dictating how everyone else should run their lives. It is the most fucking insane bullshit I've ever seen in my life. And Bitcoin doing its thing, just exposing United Nations. You're like, oh, the United Nations, like they're good people. Nope. The United States government, good people. Nope. It's like all the European Central Bank can't be that bad. Nope. Like it's like exposed after exposed after exposed after exposed. It exposes what they really want. They don't want the United Nations is prosperity for all, human, equality, all that shit. It's like, no, bro. Prosperity for all as long as it's under your system. If it's prosperity for all under another system, no, you can't have that. Like it is fucking crazy. It is crazy. I suspect it's gonna get worse. I suspect 5-10 years, like these next 5-10 years, you're gonna see shit that you could have never imagined. There's this really famous saying that says there's decades that nothing happened, and then there's years that decades happen. And right now we are in the beginning to middle of the fourth turning. The institutions that we used to trust are collapsing. Trust in them are collapsing. And I think on the other side, you're going to really see freedom of which humanity has never experienced before. It's going to be insane. But a lot of people stand to lose a lot because of that freedom. And it's a book that I always recommend to people is if you want to know what's going to happen, and it's been extremely accurate in predicting all this, read the book The Sovereign Individual. It was so head on with its predictions, and it used the theory of violence, right? So the way that the system is currently set up is the countries, nation states, however you want to call it, they've set up a system that is so effective at extracting wealth from its populace, from its most productive citizens. And before Bitcoin, they didn't really have a choice but to put up with it. Now with the internet, where it's like, look, me and you are streaming. I don't know where you are. You don't know where I am. We're, hundreds of miles away from each other. Fine. You could do work like that now. Now there's money that you could do that. So the location necessity that was an absolute 10, 20 years ago, not anymore. And this is just going to keep getting better, right? And now, let's say I'm in New York that has a crazy income tax. Peace. I'm going to go to a state that has lower income tax. So, and that's just going to keep happening, right? And fine, the poor people, the middle class, maybe they won't be able to move because they can't afford it. But the people that actually have the money, the people that actually own the companies, the wealthiest, and they'll just leave. So that will force governments to realize, holy crap, we can't overtax because they're just going to leave. We have to incentivize these people to come. So instead of this serfdom relationship that governments have with their citizens today, I believe we're going to see a more customer relationship with citizens. You're already starting to see this a little bit. Texas, Florida, millions of migrants from New York and California, they just left. Tons of people coming to Puerto Rico because of the tax incentives over here. That's what I'm talking about. So New York and California, they're just going to squeeze. And fine, they're going to more collectivist approaches, more redistribution approaches. And it's funny because people don't learn their lessons. Look what happened in Eastern Europe. People were literally willing to get shot to escape communism in search of economic opportunity, in search of freedom. And now you can memorize a 12-word phrase and you could bring everything with you. They're so fucked. They don't even know it yet. They don't even know how fucked they are. Right now, they're in this bargaining phase where it's like, no, we could make the old system we can make the new system like the old system. It's like, nope, that's not how it works. So, but dude, they're very well capitalized. They have a lot of people believing into this idea of nationalism, nation statism, whatever. And this idea that the US government is represents the people. No. The U.S. government represents the U.S. government. Period. Doesn't represent jack shit but itself. It ensures its own survival. It's a government run by the employees. It's not a government run by the people like we've been advertised. It's a government run by the employees. Now, with Bitcoin, if we do separate money from state, how are you going to go to war if you don't have a money printer? You actually have to convince people to put up the money so that you can go to war. Oof. Good luck. Good luck. Did you know that in the Middle Ages, the wars would end because the king would run out of money? They didn't have a money printer with the gold. How are you going to do that? It's the same concept, right? So, and I believe that we're going to see all of this in our lifetime. You seem young. So you still got maybe 40, 50 years ahead of you, 60 years. Dude, we're going to see this shit. And it's going to be like the world that we're heading into has absolutely no connection to the world that we grew up in. You know, the 90s, 2000s, you know, it's like America and whatever. I love what America represents, but I strongly dislike the US government. And I think that the fundamental issue with it is that that fiat has corrupted the way that it works. It misaligned the incentives, and I think that's really what we're witnessing now. We're seeing, you know, the collapse of an old bureaucratic institution that has grown to such a size that it's really self-serving and it's parasitic in nature, man. So I don't know. I went on a little bit of a rant, but yeah.
No, I appreciate the rants. That's what these are for sure. But I mean, like, yeah, I agree with you 100% on, you know, I love what what America stands for, but the U.S. government, I just don't think stands for what America stands for. And it seems like a lot of people in power, you know, just like you said, it's like, oh, sure, you know, American people can prosper, but only if it's under my, you know, influence and things like that. And, you know, I think we're kind of like at an interesting time right now, right? Because, you know, the popular saying that's going on around in Twitter is like bear market toxicity, right? We're having a lot of Bitcoiners kind of come at a lot of these shitcoiners who are, you know, shilling some of these scams and things like that. And so, like, you know, we're having one scandal that's going on right now. BitBoy Crypto, he's suing Atozy. I don't know if I said that correctly. It's Atozy. But anyway, he made a video claiming that BitBoy Crypto was scamming his fans after he pumped a token and it shot up to, I think, like $2.50 and now crashed down. But, you know, how do we kind of avoid this situation where, you know, now it's not just, you know, the government that's getting corrupt and just wanting to stay in power and keep that influence over people and kind of benefit from that influence. But it's now like, you know, these quote unquote influencers who have millions of followers and, you know, can just, you know, bring all these people into these pump and dump schemes. Like, how are we, you know, do you think like the toxicity just needs to continue to keep outing these people? Or do we just need to, I guess, not idolize as many of these people? Like, how do we kind of avoid this situation trickling down, not just from the government, but into, like, you know, just everyday people that, you know, we see on media and news?
You know, we have a saying, which is everyone has to pay their price of tuition. Most Bitcoiners I know started with shitcoining. I got a little bit lucky because I got into Bitcoin through mining. So I always had a deeper appreciation of proof of work, but I definitely dabbled in shitcoins in the beginning. But I think that, you know, burning your finger on the stove is the biggest lesson. And I think it's inevitable. Like, they're going to start asking questions. And one of the things, you know, a lot of people buy into the tech narrative and they see Bitcoin's like, Bitcoin's slow, can't do this, you know, and it needs to be upgraded. But again, like, it all comes down to decentralization. It all comes down to what is the end goal here? What are we trying to accomplish? And look, I look, unless you are a dev, an insider, you'll eventually become a Bitcoin maxi. I really fundamentally believe that. If you've been maybe 2 or 3 years in this space, maybe you still have hope that that one shitcoin that you're holding will pump. But most people, they humble themselves and they start to realize, holy crap, if I just bought Bitcoin from the very beginning, I would have a lot more Bitcoin right now, and I didn't have to do all those circle jerks. I mean, all that mental gymnastics of buying said shitcoin A and said shitcoin B and having a portfolio of shitcoins and then thinking about whatever. Yeah, you might get lucky, of course, but you realize that what you're doing is playing the casino, right? So yeah, in the casino you could win, right? But you could also lose. So, and what I've noticed is that, dude, 95 to 99% of people would have just been better off if they just bought Bitcoin. Just buy Bitcoin, stay humble, stack sats. Odell says it perfectly, and just literally put it into cold storage, forget about it, and come back maybe 2 cycles later, about 8 years. You're going to look back to relatively to where you started. You're going to look back. You're like, holy fuck. I can't believe I have that much purchasing power. And the beauty of it is just keeps going. So it's like 8 years, 12 years. You look back, you're like, holy shit. So I had this Bitcoiner on Simply Bitcoin. We had a mining panel. It was great. It was with Ben. I can't pronounce his last name, but he's the chief mining officer at Bitfarms. We had Marshall Long, OG Bitcoiner. This dude was mining Bitcoin off his laptop when the subsidy reward was 50 Bitcoin. And he didn't know this thing was going to be worth $22,000 a coin. It was worth maybe $1, $10, $20 at the time. And with Guzman Pintos, he works at Luxor Mining, dude. And bro, people underestimate how high this thing could go. People underestimate Bitcoin and its performance. People get lost in the day-to-day, and there's also a very strong unit bias, right? Which is why a lot of to kind of tie it up with your question, that's why a lot of these influencers are so successful, because you look at Bitcoin, you're 22,000, bro. The reality is most people can't own one Bitcoin now. It's out of price. The next halving, dude, 99.9% of people can't buy a Bitcoin. And that's extremely demoralizing to people, because they're like, yo, I could buy 100 XRP. What if XRP gets to the price of Bitcoin one day? What if Ethereum gets to the price of Bitcoin one day? And, they start coming up with these ideas, right? Dude, so the unit bias is strong. I like the community's effort to like kind of make sats a thing, because then sats makes it feels a whole lot better. There's 100 million sats in one Bitcoin, right? And then you're like, yo, I have 2 million. That feels great. And then you're looking at like, what if a sat reaches 1 million? Now you're thinking, so it's like, or sorry, what if one sat reaches $1, one sat $1 parity? You're just like, holy crap, So I think it's a psychological thing. It's a matter of people not understanding the importance of decentralization. So it's a variety of things, but Bitcoin maximalism, I actually did a panel on this. It's a feature, not a bug. It's a decentralized immune system of Bitcoin. It will attack you savagely. Sometimes it attacks its own, right? It's happened to me a couple times. But it does keep you honest. It calls out the scams so savagely that people can't, unless you have high integrity, unless you're being honest about your intentions, these people will find you out and they will expose you. And that's really what I like about it. I really appreciate that feature of Bitcoin maximalism. Some people don't like it. Some people do like it. I think it serves a purpose. It's not perfect, but I definitely think it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah, and I think it's just, I've heard the positives and negatives of it. I've heard somebody say like, hey, somebody came at me on Twitter about, X token, and I actually then it like I was like, oh, screw this guy, but maybe they're right, so I'll look into it. And then they looked into it and it stopped them from shitcoining. Or, I've heard the other side of the coin, where it kind of turns people off of Bitcoin initially. But, I think at the end of the day, like you said, it's a feature, not a bug. And it's a lot of Bitcoiners just kind of, trying to help you not make the same mistakes that they made previously. But I think, like you said, at the end of the day, a lot of times it just takes getting burned yourself, which is kind of unfortunate. But it's failure is the best teacher, right? So I mean, you could have somebody coach you through it as much as possible, but at the end of the day, some people are just going to dabble in them and think that they can beat it. But I think you mentioned it earlier. A lot of the Bitcoiners that you meet that maybe are a couple years farther ahead in their journey than you or whatnot, they have that I guess peace and sense of where all they need to do is just stack sats and then chill, right? DCA and chill, just focus on doing that, and just having more Bitcoin the next day than you had the day before, and trust that eventually number go up. You put it away for 8 years or so, a couple cycles, you come back and check, and it's going to be a lot more purchasing power than you had when you first bought that Bitcoin. So I think at the end of the day, it takes some people getting burnt, but hopefully through this bear market, a lot of people are learning and kind of seeing what's going on in the overarching space, and seeing like, hey, a lot of these people and even like larger companies are kind of focusing more so on Bitcoin than any other shit coin. And so kind of on that note, Samsung Securities is now filing to create an exchange in South Korea. So Samsung is the largest company out of South Korea. They're partnering with Mirai, I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, Asset Securities, which is the largest investment bank by market cap. So we have a lot of big players kind of coming in. Granted, they're doing it on exchanges where we saw BlackRock last week or maybe the week before kind of partner with Coinbase, where they're kind of dabbling a little bit in these shit coins. But at the end of the day, I think like the underlying message is these big giant companies are seeing that this thing isn't going away, and they're going to wake up to the fact like, hey, it's Bitcoin and Bitcoin only. Maybe these big companies are going to dabble in some of these shit coins as well and kind of get burnt. But I think a lot of these big companies are going to start to do some more research and their own due diligence and kind of figure out what the average pleb has figured out. So, what do you think of, a lot of these big institutions coming in and finding their way into, the Bitcoin space and maybe the underarching crypto world?
What do I think? I mean, I think it was an inevitability. It's funny because Larry Fink, Jamie Dimon is the CEO of JP Morgan. They were all very highly critical of Bitcoin, and it was never going to amount to anything. But dude, the incentives, bro, like it's the incentives are irresistible. Like you could say that for a while, but then the reality is that your clients are going to start asking you questions. Why don't you offer this? And that's just a reality. And that's really what we're witnessing. BlackRock has $9.5 trillion under assets. It's extremely powerful and influential company. The fact that they're getting into Bitcoin is massive. But I think that people don't understand the significance of it. Maybe in 2, 3, 4 years, they'll start to be like, yo, what the fuck? But right now we're in this bear market. Everyone's doom and gloom. So I don't, it's very difficult for people to see over the horizon, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100% there too. And I think it's interesting too, because I had a little talk about this with Tone when this happened, when we were at the financial summit. And his point was he was surprised that they got in because, for a firm such as big as BlackRock, and as the market cap of Bitcoin for them is just, it doesn't really move the needle. So, they must have either really seen the technology and like the underarching.
No, I disagree. I disagree. It has nothing to do with that, dude. It has to do with they don't want to lose clients. Like that's the reality, bro. Like they just don't want to lose clients. And it's like, if we don't offer this, they're an index fund, bro. So it's like, if they don't offer this, those people are going to go somewhere else. So that's really what it does. They're ensuring their own relevance, their own survival. That's what it was about. They don't give a flying fuck about Bitcoin. Okay, they don't care. They're just like, I don't want to lose clients. Like this is what's always been about, and that's why Bitcoin always wins, the incentives, right? And all they have left on the other side is coercion. Like, oh, it's not a it's a danger to financial stability, all the fucking spin and propaganda. Dude, that's all they fucking have. They don't have anything else. So it's like at what point it's like they're standing in solidarity, this is bad. Fuck Bitcoin. But then it gets to a point where it's like, do you guys want to make money? And then the ranks start to break, and it's like, yeah, well, it sucks, but we want that. We want those clients. We want those clients to stay with us and feel like they could buy Bitcoin through us. Now, it's very dangerous because people should be taking self-custody. That's the revolution. But I mean, it's better, I guess. I think it's going to get, like Caitlin Long touches upon this a lot, the dangers of rehypothecation, paper Bitcoin. I don't think we're at 100,000. I don't think we reached 100,000 because of paper Bitcoin, right? Like they're constantly making more Bitcoin than exists. The government successfully suppressed the gold market for decades doing this. And I think they're going to try to do the same with Bitcoin unless enough people take self-custody, right? So anyways.
No, hey, you make a great point there. So, I think everything you said there makes a whole lot of sense, and I didn't really think about it on that aspect too. And the thing that I guess it stands out to me then too is like, not only do they not want to lose clients, that it makes me believe that they've already lost clients, and some of these high net worth individuals are essentially demanding it, right? Because at the end of the day, they got to make these people that have a lot of money with them happy, right? So yeah, I mean, I think that's a really interesting point, and I think that just means more and more people are demanding it. So you got to make those customers happy.
Dude, 100 million%. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the last story, we're gonna wrap it up here. So I'm in Austin right now for BitBlock Boom. So if you haven't heard of it, it's I mean, from my perspective, it's like the biggest, I guess, Bitcoin only conference that I've heard of, because as big as Bitcoin Miami is, there is a little bit of shit coinery that goes around there, and it is a great event. So I don't want to undermine it or anything like that. But BitBlock Boom is here in Austin. There's a lot of side events. There's Pleb Lab open house tomorrow. There's a lot of stuff going on in the Bitcoin Commons. Oshi had a block party last night on Wednesday. So there's a lot of stuff going on in Austin. But there's been a few geographical hubs previously, that come to mind, maybe like a Silicon Valley, where a lot of people are kind of coming together and almost being a little centralized in like one hub, one area, one location. Do you see Austin kind of building towards that? And do you see that as like maybe a positive or a negative, for the Bitcoin space going forward?
Yeah. BitBlock Boom is awesome. Gary's a friend of mine. He asked us to do, we're hosting the Twitter spaces for them on Saturday. Simply Bitcoin is great conference. One of my favorite, very, very toxic, very maxi. Yeah, I think Austin's going to be the Bitcoin energy capital of the world. And I think that Nashville is going to be the Bitcoin cultural capital of the world. Odell is working on an awesome project over there called Bitcoin Park, Bitcoin TV. Bitcoin Mag is also headquartered there. So I really think it's going to be between Austin and Nashville. I love Nashville. More fan of Nashville than I am of Austin. Nothing against Austin in particular. I just, I don't know. I think it's a matter of taste. And I'm also in media. So I think Nashville is more of a media hub, whereas in Austin is more energy/mining hub. It's also kind of a tech hub before that. So, I mean, I think it's just a matter of taste. I think that if you're a Bitcoiner, Austin is great. Nashville is great. If you're really looking for opportunity, I just really like Puerto Rico, dude. The tax incentives are just, do you really want to pay 20% to the government? Like, that's the question that I have to ask for you. If the answer is yes, then so be it. Live in Austin, live in Nashville. But my answer is no. Fuck that shit. Look at them, dude. Look at them. Okay? Like, look at what they're doing. You really want to pay those motherfuckers 20 to 30, 40% of your income? Like, no. So what do? You have to do it around legally. You can't just, not pay your tax, they're going to put you in a box, right? So I mean, like, yeah, and that's what I love about Puerto Rico is the tax incentive, right? Um, and I've seen a tremendous amount of Bitcoiners move here because of that. So let's see, man. Let's see. I really think that the theory from the sovereign individual is playing out. You're going to see people just going to go where they're treated best. I think that the taxes, the way that we know it, aren't going to be viable long term because more and more people are going to wake up to the fact of like, I could just move somewhere else and pay very little. Like, why am I doing this? Pay very little legally. So yeah, I think this is going to continue to play out. I think the internet is just going to continue getting better and faster. And dude, we're going to be streaming in 4K in 10 years, like without a doubt in my mind, right? So it's like, then what is the point of you being there? It's like the people interaction, fine, you can make that. But then COVID really made everything remote. I don't know. I know I went a little long on that answer, but yeah, Austin's dope.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel you, but I mean, I agree with you too on the tax, kind of incentive stuff too, because I grew up in Austin. I bring this up a lot on the show, but just being out here right now for BitBlock Boom, it's it's almost a little depressing, kind of the way that I've seen the city go. I mean, I moved here with my family and what was it, like 96, 97 or something. So we were here, 25 years ago at this point. So, yeah, it's changed a whole lot. I was just on Rainy Street a little bit earlier today, and it used to be this kind of cool street with a bunch of houses that turned into bars. And now it seems like every other house is getting torn down, and condominiums are going up like sky high and everything like that. And, there's homeless population everywhere, kind of downtown, and construction everywhere. So, I mean, I think that there's a lot of positives going on in the Bitcoin space. I'm just not, I guess, fully confident that, the governmental policies, what they're doing locally is, maybe beneficial for the city as a whole, or maybe I'm just being nostalgic right now and missing like the city that I kind of grew up in. I don't know. I mean, I like Austin. I do really like Nashville as well. So I think like overall, I think it's good to kind of have that interpersonal interaction. I do think that, that's been kind of lost a little bit with COVID. But yeah, I don't know if you necessarily need to live in those cities in order to get that, like, of course, like you said, you and I we're in different places. We
Dude,
met
I mean,
at another conference. So, I
look,
mean,
the tax thing, maybe on a year by year level, it's not a big deal. But if you start compounding how much money you pay to the government, it's an absurd amount of money. What are they doing with that money? They could just print it anyways. I don't know, man. Like, that's kind of where I'm at in my head. But again, some people kind of like that. Like, they like the the camaraderie and being with people and being whatever. But I think it really comes down to taxes, bro. Like, it's like, dude, the Puerto Rico with Act 20 and Act 22, you pay a fraction, of what you would pay regularly. Legally, of course, it's all over the table. It's all kosher. Like, bro, like, I don't know, man. Like, it's such a crazy idea. Like, when I was living in Florida, like, dude, like, I was like, this is normal. Like, this is just the way it is. And then my girlfriend was the one that lived here, and she incentivized me slowly. She's like, okay, Nico, come here, whatever. Then I finally came here, and then I started experiencing it, and I was like, holy crap, I can't believe that. So maybe it's a conditioning thing, bro. Like, maybe we just grow up and it's like, dude, it's totally normal to give 20% of your, which means that if you take a year, 20% of the year you were working for the government, you were working for Nancy Pelosi. Fuck that. I don't know. Just some thoughts.
hey man, America was kind of founded on the taxation without representation kind of stuff, right? The Boston
Yeah.
Tea Party and all that. They rallied over a lot less than 20 to 30% in taxes, and that's for sure. But on that note, Nico, you've been very generous with your time, so I really appreciate it. So thanks so much for coming on. Why don't you tell people what you got going on and where they can find you?
Yeah, Simply Bitcoin, it goes live every day, 12:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Saturday. We stream on Twitter Spaces with Swan Bitcoin, and we also stream on YouTube, on Rumble, and on Bitcoin TV. You can find us there. Yeah, man. Just keep going, stay humble, stack sats. We're gonna win this, but it's definitely gonna get a little bit bumpier for sure.
Yeah, I mean, on that note, it might, but at the end of the day, I think Bitcoin kind of fixes it, right? So just keep stacking, and yeah, listen to Simply Bitcoin and get educated and figure out some ways that you can be individually sovereign. So on that note, that's it for the State of Bitcoin podcast. Thanks for coming out.